Good morning. This pattern is going to be the Smokejumper. So it's a great emerger pattern. Very effective. Pretty easy to tie as well. We're pretty much going to use the thread for the body of this particular fly. And I'm on a size 16 here, but usually I'll be on an 18 or a 20 for Smokejumper here. So with that, I'm going with you can change the colors around if you want, just by changing the thread that you're using. This is sort of that green olive, blue wing olive kind of look, which is what I'm going for here. I'm going to tie in a piece of a small size silver wire, and I'm going to let that carry over to the back side of my hook here, and then I'm just going to pull that wire back so I don't have to cut it off. So it's still trapped under my thread. This is going to be one of those flies where we're going to work really hard on thread control. With this thread, I will continually kind of rotate it counterclockwise, and that will help unwind the thread and flatten it out, because we want a nice slick taper to this fly, and we're going to just go down around pretty deep around the bend of the hook here. And then I'm going to start traveling back up, and I want to try to make these wraps as close to touching as I can, because that's going to help us get that smooth finish and a good taper. So I'm doing a lot of work with my bobbin here, a lot more than probably what you can see on camera, but I'm just continually twisting that bobbin to get that thread flattened out, and we're going to travel back down a little ways. Just continuing to build that tight taper. So once I'm about here, this area here we're going to use as the thorax, and the back half is going to be our abdomen. So in order to get that taper, I'm just going to take my thread and travel about maybe halfway down. I'm going to flatten the thread, and then I'm going to bring it back up. And by doing that, going back and forth like that, we're going to build a nice taper. And I'll do that probably one more time, except I'm not going to go halfway. I'm going to go a little bit less while trying to keep that thread flattened. And I'll turn my vise from time to time just to make sure I don't have any big gaps or weird bumps in here. I don't think the fish are going to pay attention to that. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not going to eat that. There's a little gap. That does not look like the emerging mayfly that I was hoping for. Okay, so we've got that in place. I'm going to go ahead from here and take my silver wire, and we're going to start wrapping pretty open wraps as we move up the abdomen here. So what you're going to try to do as you do this is possibly just ever so slightly increase the gap as you move up to create a more natural ribbing. And now I'm right up where my thread is. This is where we're going to tie it off. I'm just going to put my thread over the top of that wire. I'll take a wrap on the other side as well. Then we're just going to use that helicopter friction. I'm just going to kind of spin this around, and that wire will break right off. So we are done with the abdomen of the fly. So to begin our abdomen on the fly, I'm going to use some CDC oiler puffs. Actually just one. This is just natural done, and it's going to create the wing case for us, and it's also going to create that emerging wing. I want this to be about the length of the body, so I'm going to kind of measure this feather to about the length that I want it, and then I'm going to go ahead and switch hands, turn my thread kind of counterclockwise, both to flatten it out but also to catch that feather. I want to keep that on the top of the hook, and I'm going to take a look now and see once I wrap this forward if that's long enough, and that's looking about where I want it to be. So now I'm just going to continue to flatten my thread here, give us some room, space to do our abdomen, or thorax, I'm sorry, while keeping this on the top of the hook shank. So also for the thorax, we're going to use a Peacock herl. Already got one selected and picked out here, and I'm going to cut about half an inch off the top of this because the top is really fragile, and this will probably break on me, so you just have to be really careful with this. I'm going to put this in, tie it on the top of the shank of the hook here with a couple of thread wraps moving down, and then I'm going to kind of just just draw that feather backwards so that I have nothing to cut off, which is exactly what I'm looking for here. Then we're just going to come right back up to where we want that thorax to start with our Peacock herl. And what I do next here, this is a personal preference kind of a thing, but I prefer to just grab that Peacock herl with some hackle pliers and use my rotary. So what I like to do is just throw a knot in right here. I'll use my whip finisher just because I can get a more accurate location for this half hitch knot, and I only took a couple of turns. I'm not looking to build any bulk here. We're going to build some bulk at the eye of the hook, and we want to minimize that as much as we possibly can. So by putting that half hitch in, we can now put that on our bobbin cradle. I know you can't see the whole thing, but I have both hands free. I can rotate my vise now without anything coming unwrapped. So now I'm just going to grab my hackle pliers, and we're going to attach it to our Peacock, and we're going to hope that we're lucky enough to not have this break off. So I'm just going to start taking turns right here in the back. We'll just move our way up towards the eye of the hook. So each wrap is going to go right in front of the one before it. And that's about as much as we need right there. So I'll take my thread off my bobbin cradle and move that out of the way. I'm going to try to tighten my thread up while I keep tension on the Peacock herl so it doesn't come unwound. I'm going to take a wrap over the top of that Peacock herl. So that's going over the stem and locking it in place. I'm going to pull it backwards, and I'm going to actually take a wrap or two right here behind the eye, and then I can let my hackle pliers go. Up to you. Again, I like to just probably break that off rather than use my scissors. And then I'm just going to lay down some of those fibers that were left behind. Flatten my thread again. I'm going to go backwards a couple of wraps, and I'm going to put some wax on my thread here because I want to really be able to lock this CDC puff down. So I've got my CDC. You can see it kind of coming out the back. This is my oiler puff. I'm going to take those fibers and I'm going to pull them up and over the top here. I'm going to turn my thread counterclockwise so I make sure that it is going kind of backwards. I'm just going to take a couple of wraps to lock that down in place, just like that. And then I'm going to pull those fibers backwards and take a couple of thread wraps, and that's going to have those fibers sticking straight up. So to finish this off, I'm just going to use this tool here that will just put a half hitch in, hopefully right there in front of our little wing, and I'll put 2 or 3 wraps on here. You can see how good my vision is. That's gonna be good enough for me. That's gonna hold that in place. I'm gonna grab my thread cutter. Release my thread, and with that we have our fly. Here's the Smokejumper. Great emerger pattern. Pretty easy to tie. Actually kind of fun to tie too. So grab yourself a hook, take a seat, grab your vise and your thread. Have a good time.